if there's only one absolute truth, and Islam is that truth, then everything else is false by default. Everything. Because nothing is reconcilable with Islam. What saves you in Christianity condemns you in Islam. What condemns you in Islam saves you in Christianity. So we know nothing is reconcilable. Not one religion is reconcilable. So they're all false. Everything other than Islam. All we can do is study why that is. Where is the presupposition? Where is the false assumption? And then we can speak to people of those faiths and show them, well, look, you're believing this is true, but the problem you've got is it's based upon this, which isn't true. So I have no issues with, if you're going to debate Christians, understand their scripture, understand their doctrines, which is what I do. Yeah. And by doing that, we took many Christians back to agnosticism from Christianity, who used to think the Bible is a reliable source of information, when the reality is it isn't. Yeah. Standard. Now, if you're a Christian, where say you have to put your mind in a box, because it means you can't think too hard on what you're supposed to believe as a Christian. Because once you start scrutinizing it, it crumbles. So you just have
People
to put it in a box.
literally say the same thing about Muslims.
No, you can't. No, you can't. No,
I never say, like, I don't know what's true until I die. I believe what I believe. I have faith in Allah.
Say the same
and when
thing
I
about
die,
Muslims.
I will see what's true.
Okay.
We will see.
I'll tell you why you can't say the same thing about Muslims. Yeah. So with Muslims, you take Islam out the box and you scrutinize Islam and you can answer everything. There's no crazy doctrines that we have to adhere to. There's no corrupted scriptures. There's nothing. The problems that Christianity has, we don't have. The preservation we have.
Why is there so much Muslim infighting then?
That's another story. That's man. That's another story.
So can't they say that's man as well, who interfered in their text?
Nope, because that's supposed to be God.
So there are people who feel you don't need hadith and you just need the Quran, because they say that the hadiths are conflicting. They are, they're
Did you not see the streams we did?
And stuff like that. They said they were gathered 200 years after the Prophet died. They have all this stuff they could say too. So I mean,
Milahan, if you go to my channel, we've got 2 streams answering hadith rejectors, answering the Quranists, I think it's called. And we basically did exactly the same thing. We invited hadith rejectors and Quranists to come on, and we just rinsed them. That's it. So people can make claims of all sorts of things, but it doesn't stand. So a Quranist has to put his mind in a box also. Yeah, he can't think too much about it because he's got to answer certain questions. He can't. Why does a Quranist believe the Quran is true and reject hadith? Now, the Quranist has 2 problems.
But the Sharia is a box. You cannot exit the Quran and Sunnah. That is a box. That is a square. That's your frame of work.
No, you're missing the point when I say in a box. When I say in a box is you can't think about it too much. Sharia is not in a box that you can't think about it. You apply the Sharia, isn't it? But the point I'm saying is, in Christianity, you can't question the doctrine because it collapses. As soon as you question the authors of the Gospels being disciples of Jesus, it collapses. So you just got to leave it in that box and have faith that that's the way it was, and that's it.
Do you know that people do the same with Allah's names and attributes?
Yeah.
They say you cannot question Allah's names and attributes, and that's where a lot of the problems come in with Sufis and Shias.
Okay.
So that's a box. They say don't question those attributes and names.
Oh, okay. Me personally, I don't put anything in a box. Yeah, I get upset. People get upset with me when I was questioning when Jesus apparently was he substituted or was it swoon theory? And oh, brother, you can't say that. It's got to be this. And then why does it have to be that? Well, I can't think for myself. I can't. How did the tafsir know what happened? The Prophet didn't say what happened. It's all come from Israeli Jewish Christian tradition. So I've got no issue with questioning things. And I heard what you said the other day about, Muslims should be able to debate stuff. Why should everything be locked up? I have no issue with that. The problem is it is locked up in a certain case. But me personally, why is it I got people, the age of Aisha, I'm kind of like, I don't believe she was 6 and 9. I believe she was like 13, 14. Now, apparently, I'm not allowed to have that opinion. But that is my opinion, based upon what I've seen and studied with regards to it. And that's the position I hold. Whether she was 6 or 9 I don't feel uneasy. It doesn't make me think, oh, how could you marry a 6-year-old? That's not a problem. I can defend that. It's not a problem. The point is, I don't think it leads there. I think there's enough peripheral evidence to maybe suggest she's older than 6 and 9. And just
I don't think it's very good good. You should be very, very careful with that topic. You know, like you would defend. I was molested as a child. You know, you have to be very careful with the way you talk about that. You know, like you would defend. You have to be very. People can. It's very harsh area. It's not an easy area for many people. It is very uncomfortable.
If you lived in London, you could marry a 6-year-old in the 12th century in the UK, legally.
I know, but it's still like, you know, I feel like you have more grace. Just have some just discretion and grace, and it's a sensitive area for many people, good or bad. You know, like it's just an area where you're like, Allah knows best. I think it's the best answer.
But what I'm saying is, I don't lean towards an older age because I'm uncomfortable if she was younger. That's not a problem for me, because that's standard. That's what happened in history. That's what happened in history. If that was the going rate, that was the going rate. You know, we know Aisha was engaged already prior to her marriage to the Prophet. So we know this is a tradition that's gone on. And like I said, in England in the 12th century, you could marry a 6-year-old and consummate that marriage when she was 9, legally, by law. So if she was that age, that's not the reason I'm saying, oh, she must be older because he would never marry that young. It's the fact that, well, actually, I don't know. There's enough other evidences that I'd have to put my mind in a box and not think about. That's the reality. And I can't ignore that stuff. Do you get me? So that's how I am. Now, some other brothers say to me, "Astaghfirullah, brother, you can't say that." But I'm like, well, that's my position. And, you know, and Sheikh Uthman from San Diego, he's in the same boat with me on this. But again, it's not because we're shy of the age of 6 and 9. Because if that was the age, that was the age. But that's not the reason. So
but you have to. But the thing is, when you say it like that, we have to be responsible people and say that was then and this is now.
That's the point.
What?
That's the point I'm making.
I know, but sometimes just you have to say like you have to like
no.
How anthropologists and archaeologists, we have to be a little bit of a dry academic and be like, that was then. Allah knows best how they documented birthdays, even, you know, different calendar, how time was measured.
But
this is the things that feels like
what I'm saying is, I'm sorry, I glossed over what you said about you being abused as a kid. Sorry to hear that. But what I was saying is, I could basically have the conversation with somebody justifying the age of 6 and 9. Then right at the end, I'll say, by the way, I don't believe that anyway. I believe she was 30. But the point is, going through what you're saying, the age of the time, this, that, the early death rates and things, it's not a problem for me. That's not the reason why I needed to be older. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
I know that part.
So for me, the evidence leads away. And if you want me to maintain this explicit, because it says an explicit hadith, the numbers 6 and 9, and ignore that, I just can't. Because that's not how my mind works. My mind, well, what about that? And how could that? And how could that have happened? And I thought Abu Bakr had all his kids before Islam. Then how? It doesn't make no sense. So I'd have to ignore that to accept that. And then I see, for example, one of the narrators is Hisham ibn Urwa from Iraq, and even like Imam Malik and Ibn Asqalani both say that, you know, he's reliable until he went to Iraq, and then he started losing his mind a bit, and then you can't take from him. And whether Sahih, you know, Imam Bukhari knew of that distinction between when he was in Makkah, when he was in Medina, and when he was in Iraq, I don't know. But the point is, there's a weakness in it. So there's reasons why it leads me away. So my mind is certainly not in a box. Yeah, and I upset brothers sometimes saying this stuff. You know, and especially the crucifixion, man. They tried to lynch me, man. They were saying, you can't say that. I said, what do you mean I can't say that? They're saying, you can't say that maybe he was on the cross but didn't die, but swooned instead and such. You know, like, you know, Ahmadiyya and Shabir Ali and such, they go along with that kind of line. And I'm like, yeah, but when I look at it, kind of makes sense. You know, the idea that why are women going to his grave 3 days later with ointment to a dead body to do what with it? Do you get me? And there's so many things that it don't add up for me. And then when you tell me about this substitution theory that he was exchanged for another, and then you're giving me Tafsir Ibn Kathir with regards to it, and you're talking about how young Sahaba volunteered to be the substitute. But then Ibn Kathir said he got the information from Ibn Abbas, and then Ibn Abbas says it was a Roman centurion who was transformed into Jesus. I said, wait a minute. So he's saying that. He's saying he got it from that. He's saying something completely different to that. It's the devil's in the detail here. Do you get me? And then what's the source of all this? Well, it's certainly not Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's certainly not Allah. So where's it coming from? It's coming from Israeliyat. It's coming from Christian Jewish traditions, or whatever hearsay, or whatever it is. And people were pinning me to it, saying, no, you have to believe in the substitution. Now, on reflection, I do lean towards substitution now more than so in theory. But at the time, people were saying you can't do it. Now, I didn't change my mind because people were saying you can't do it. It was a case of, well, looking at the substitution, someone said to me, what's the problem? Why you've got an issue with the substitution? I'm thinking, well, I don't know. And then when you look at the, the idea that, Christians were reporting Jesus was crucified, and Flavius Josephus was saying Jesus was crucified, and Tacitus was saying Jesus was crucified, and history reporting Jesus was crucified. Well, Allah says in the Quran, they thought he was crucified. So the people thought he was crucified. They're going to be reporting he was crucified, and history will report he was crucified. So then it's like, yeah. And then you see things like Barabbas, who was the rebel leader. His name was Jesus. What? So the rebel leader's name's Jesus Barabbas, and Barabbas means son of the Father. And you're like, what? So you're telling me Pontius Pilate apparently says, who shall I release? Jesus, son of the Father, or Jesus of Nazareth? You're like, what? It's the same person. And what's going on here? It's a madness. And then you look in history, and there's no evidence of Romans releasing anybody on the Passover. The idea, and Jesus Barabbas was the leader of the rebels. You're in a city that is on the verge of rebellion, and you're a representative of Caesar in Jerusalem, and you release the rebel leader? Come on, man. The Romans were not stupid. So just historically, it all collapses. Everything just collapses.